This is the Israel weapon industry's Negev light machine gun. It's a 5.56 gas-operated open-bolt weapon that was designed domestically and produced inside Israel since 1997. You probably noticed many of the Israeli defense soldiers carrying around a machine gun that you might not be familiar with, unless you're really into Counter-Strike. So in this episode, I want to explore how the Negev's capabilities are specifically made for the environment that IDF soldiers operate in. What kind of small unit tactics does the IDF use with it? And how does it stack up against the type of machine guns used by their adversaries? To set our expectations before we get into this episode is not an endorsement or condemnation of any recent conflicts. It's not about the morality of battles, nor the geopolitics or foreign affairs like some of the other content I produce. This is purely from the perspective of the small unit tactics and strategy of the IDF's Negev machine gun for people who are interested in learning about the weapon system and my personal insights as a former SAW gunner in the US Army. Negev machine guns serve as the IDF's squad automatic weapon. Typically, each infantry squad is assigned 2 squad automatic weapons. An average infantry squad of 9 soldiers is broken down into 2 separate fire teams of 4 soldiers, each led by an NCO, a squad leader. This style of delegation of responsibilities allows individuals to focus on various tasks while still following the overall intent of your commanders. Each fire team is usually equipped with 1 Negev machine gun. The reason for this strategy is because it gives each fire team leader command over what's known as the highest casualty producing weapon in your squad. This allows the lowest levels of leadership to use some strategy when choosing when and where to deploy their Negev asset. The best way to deploy this weapon is to direct the soldier carrying it to cover what's called high-speed avenues of approach. A high-speed avenue of approach is an improved road that vehicles can quickly move across. The Negev is perfect for covering these because its high volume of fire gives it the capability to destroy an incoming vehicle's engine and stop it in its tracks. Vehicles can be loaded with explosives and used as vehicle-borne bombs. The Negev light machine gun is used to create what's called suppressing fire. Suppressing fire is a key concept in small unit tactics. It's part of human nature to duck or take cover when bullets land nearby, whether they're fired accurately at you or not. The terrifying sound and feeling of a bullet impacting close by sends any sane person to the floor. So when we look at how the Negev has this insane rate of fire of 1,050 rounds per minute at its highest rate of fire setting, that's 17 bullets per second flying at 3,000 feet per second. Think about it. The Negev machine gun only needs to land some of those bullets within a few meters of the opposing force in order to force them to take cover. When the opposing forces take cover, it gives the squad, the IDF squad, a momentary open window. It gives them the freedom to maneuver more safely. There are 2 main actions that this opens up. The first is it lets riflemen flank the enemy from behind. The Negev machine gun's original version weighed 17 pounds, which means it's best used for a stationary, supported position as opposed to kicking indoors and running around with, although it is used for that. For context, compare the Negev machine gun, which weighs 10 pounds more than the M4 and TAVR rifles that your regular IDF infantry carry. If you're carrying 1,000 rounds, that's 27 additional pounds of weight required for the Negev machine gunner. A team leader in control of a Negev machine gunner needs to keep this in mind when choosing what tasks to assign them. Suppressing fire from the Negev also allows IDF soldiers equipped with rocket launchers to step out from cover and take time to aim at their targets. This is part of the reason why suppressing fire from the Negev light machine gun plays such a critical role in maneuver warfare at the lowest tactical levels. Oftentimes, conscript armies have weak NCO corps because soldiers rotate out frequently, but the way Israel set up their reserve system, their junior leaders at the squad and platoon level are experienced and effective. They know how to deploy assets like the Negev. There are disagreements about how well the NCO leadership operates above the small unit platoon level, but that's a discussion for a different video. The regular IDF soldier carrying this is sometimes called a Negevist, and they are the workhorse of your average infantry team. They also play an important role in clearing operations. The Israeli Defense Forces are known for targeted raid operations, where their objective is to clear a building or a section of buildings of enemy targets. If the IDF uses a bulldozer to knock down a building and force their opponents to to attempt to escape the building, they will strategically position Negev machine gunners in what's called an overwatch position. Overwatch positions are normally an elevated location that has good visibility of the target building. From here, they will observe any opposing forces that attempt to escape out the back of the building. These enemies trying to escape are known colloquially as squirters that attempt to squirt out the back of a building. The reason Negev is perfect for this role is because it normally has an ammunition belt of between 100 and 200 rounds. That's more than 6 times the ammo capacity compared to your average rifleman that has a 30-round mag. This makes the Negev perfect for this kind of overwatch strategy where a high volume of fire is necessary to freeze the enemy in their tracks. The first thing you'll notice about the Negev is that visually it closely resembles the FN Mini-Me or M249 SAW for us Americans. Even though it serves the same purpose, that's kind of deceptive because once you pop open the hood of the Negev, you'll see it's actually extremely different, allowing the weapon to claim that it's a step above many of its counterparts.
We interrupt this transmission to update you on the artificial intelligence robot invasion currently threatening to destroy the Earth.
We need a big and powerful weapon to stop them.
No, you fool, we need the opposite. We need this episode's sponsor, Goat Guns. Now listen to my shameless exposition on why it works. Robot algorithms can't recognize my mini 1/3 scale replicas as weapons. It's the only way to get around their fancy high-tech visual recognition system. Quick, Cappy, use your die-cast metal replica realistically crafted RPK with drum magazine attachment to smoke those robots.
Oh no, it's not working! The menacing robots are still targeting me!
All your base are belong to us.
Wait, I have an idea. Hey robots, these don't actually fire real bullets. They're models that have some decent heft to them, with dummy rounds that actually eject.
Does not compute, does not compute.
Take this, you metal rust bucket. So stupid. With Goat Guns in your hands, you have the power to save Earth from the AI threat. Just click the link in the description or pinned comment below to choose from a wide variety of mini model Goat Guns today. The Negev traces its roots to the 1980s, when the IDF's go-to light machine gun was the Galil ARM, which is a modified variant of the standard Galil assault rifle, except it's capable of more heavy sustained automatic fire. However, that system was still limited to having to fire from low-capacity magazines instead of belts, and it had a notorious reputation for overheating. So the Israelis wanted a belt-fed, open-bolt, fire-team-level machine gun. Initially, the IDF considered the FN Mini-Me from Belgium as a possible replacement, even going so far as to equip some of their frontline infantry formations with them in limited numbers. Ultimately, FN's design didn't quite make the cut for the IDF. The reason for this is because the Belgium Mini-Me was designed to operate in as many different environments as possible at a reasonable level, but not necessarily to excel in any one specific environment. When we get under the hood, the mechanical complexity of the Mini-Me led to noticeable failures with the troops, and the maintenance requirements by individual soldiers was deemed excessive. I was a saw gunner at one point in the army, and I can tell you the weapon is notorious for malfunctions, especially if you don't maintain it well. It's gonna jam up on you constantly. But there was another, possibly even more important reason for not going with the Belgium Mini-Me. Like all good military development histories, there was political pressure. Israeli politicians and the IDF generals at this time were moving away from a strategy that relied on foreign military sales. Instead, they wanted a light machine gun that didn't have an overly complex or unreliable international logistics chain that could potentially leave them high and dry in an emergency when they needed weapons badly. This is the Israel Military Industries, established in 1933 as a state-owned enterprise to produce Israel's small arms weapons at the Negev division. IMI first rose to fame with their invention of the iconic Uzi submachine gun in the 1950s. IMI was headquartered in the central part of the country, right near Tel Aviv originally, in a town called Ramat Harashan, where they had over 500 employees. Between the 1950s and the 1960s, the town of Ramat Harashan was mainly a farming community, but after that they became known as the location of the Small Arms Weapon Development Factory. IMI began development of the Negev in the early 1990s under secrecy. Initial blueprints were approved in 1992, with rumors that prototypes were exported to small warring countries like El Salvador for combat field testing. Production models were first manufactured in 1995, and they entered official military trials in 1996, and were officially adopted by the IDF as their standard issue squad automatic weapon in 1997. Once it hit the front lines, Israeli troops quickly fell in love with the weapon system, that according to most accounts was a very reliable, smooth-firing machine gun. The Negev fires the standard NATO 5.56x45 round. The 5.56 ammo type is one of the main differences between the small arms used by the IDF and the ones typically used by the opposing forces like Hamas and Hezbollah, which normally use the bigger 7.62mm Soviet round found in the AK series. Israel, however, has created their own version of the ammo called Razor Core that they claim has better characteristics. The increase in the reliability for the Negev, though, is achieved through its 3-stage gas regulator, with the first setting specifically set to adjust the reciprocation of the bolt to match the feeding speed of the magazine. Your second gas setting will serve well for standard cyclic rates of 850 to 900 rounds a minute, and the final, third setting for fouling conditions to push as much gas back to the bolt as possible in case the weapon needs to run dirty. This means if IDF soldiers are in sandy or muddy conditions, they're able to force the weapon to fire reliably, possibly at the cost of overall life cycle of the weapon's parts and barrels, although at that moment you're probably not worried about that. Unlike many light machine guns that only have the option of safe or fully automatic, the Negev has a semi-auto function. Part of the advantage of the feed tray cover looking different and this semi-auto function is that it looks more like a standard rifle, and the opposing forces are known for targeting Negev machine gun operators because of how effective the weapon system is. By giving the Negev a semi-auto function in combat, this can be used to hide the fact that you have a machine gun if you don't want to make yourself or your squad a more important target. But its most useful function of the semi-auto feature actually comes in zeroing the optics of your weapon or conserving ammo if need be. Zeroing most machine guns requires the shooter to fire short bursts at a zeroing target, which can be inconsistent, use a lot of unnecessary ammo, more time, and ultimately not give an accurate alignment with the sight. With semi-auto, none of that is an issue. The Negev doubles down with its sight accuracy with the use of a short feed tray cover. Rather than have a feed tray cover that runs almost the entire length of the receiver where optics are mounted, which causes a number of potential issues, the Negev optics mounting is on the receiver itself, giving a sturdier base that'll ultimately give better accuracy. But it's one of the most distinct visual differences between the American M249 and the Negev. But there are several details in the design that have been given similar attention to make the overall use easier for the operator, or soldier-proof, or Cappy-proof as my squad leader used to call it. One of these being the barrel change mechanism. Depending on rates of fire, the Negev requires a quick change barrel swap every 250-ish rounds to prevent overheating. If your barrel overheats, it can warp and curve and not work anymore. This machine gun mechanically locks the barrel in place when the feed tray cover is closed. This forces the shooter to actually ensure the weapon is cleared before yanking the barrel out and causing any potential issues. The locking mechanism of the barrel is also significantly simplified through the use of the feed tray, making barrel swaps much easier to do when the stress and adrenaline of a firefight means you don't have to finesse your barrel back into the receiver or worry about the bolt being forward or back. Now that simplification is mirrored in the monolithic bolt assembly of the gun, which is actually closer in design to the Soviet PKM that you'll frequently see in the hands of Hamas or Hezbollah rather than Western designs. The Negev bolt is both mechanically simpler and cheaper to produce, keeping production and maintenance costs low. The Negev recoil spring, rather than using a single recoil spring and rod, uses two smaller but long recoil springs. The purpose is to reduce felt recoil to the shooter. When firing a weapon, a majority of the kick or recoil comes from the force impulse of the bolt assembly hitting the rear of the receiver. The longer recoil system allows the bolt assembly to travel further backwards, giving it more time and space to slow down, while also recoiling into a neoprene material buffer, which reduces the snappiness of the felt recoil. This is known as a constant recoil system, meaning after the first round, the weapon is easily controlled going full auto. Like any good design, the Negev has undergone a series of upgrades during its time in service that tells us a lot about their changing adversary. The Negev NG7 Variant, the newest version that I know about, fires the 7.62x51mm NATO round. This packs a much bigger punch than the original 5.56 round. It's not the added range that the IDF wants though. They seek to punch through opposing forces' body armor. For decades, militants and insurgents didn't have level 4 body armor plates, but recently they have armor that can stop 5.56 rounds easily. The IDF already had the 7.62 FN mag, but the NG7 only weighs 6.6 kilograms or 14.5 pounds and has an option for a short 330mm barrel, allowing one soldier to operate it, unlike the crew-served FM mag that requires 2. The Negev isn't necessarily known for pinpoint accuracy, let's be honest. Israel knows the exact fight that the Negev will be engaged in, that being complex urban terrain, where the range of firefights is much likely to be closer to 50 meters rather than 500 meters away. Technically, the weapon has a max range of 1,000 meters, but your sweet spot is really going to be within 300 to 400 meters for a point target, and 500 to 600 meters for an area target if you're a great shot. Of course, it wouldn't be an IDF weapon system if it didn't include some unique bit of technology only they would think of, that being the IWI E-Log. All Negevs have the ability to be equipped with the E-Log, a series of weapon interfaces that record weapon data. The E-Log records information like operation time, number of shots fired, any incurred malfunctions, and ties all of this back to the specific shooter assigned that weapon. This streamlines the maintenance process for the machine gun and makes it easier for maintainers to keep the weapon system in working order. There's something really interesting about that, knowing that your weapon is going to tell your commander when you're shooting and when you're not shooting. It could also create this incentive within soldiers to fire their weapon more. Many soldiers don't fire their weapon in combat and just take cover, so this could be interesting to see if it changes that. Modern Negev operators receive detailed views of the performance of their specific machine gun and recommendations of additions in maintenance. In 2020, manufacturing in the Negev relocated to Israel's newest weapon factory in Kiryat Gat, an industrial district about 13 miles northeast of the Gaza border. The small arms division was privatized and is no longer owned by the state. This move comes as more and more countries are gradually adopting Negev in small numbers, and Israel has increased export of the weapon system. In fact, 23 countries currently use the Negev in some capacity, usually by special forces or elite infantry units. Israel has long relied on its own military-industrial complex to spur its economy, going back to the first exports of the Uzi and Galil. The Negev is no different. Unlike most weapon manufacturers that readily license out production to different countries for a set rate, Israel produces all the world's Negev machine guns, with the exception of a single factory in Vietnam, which was built in part by the Israeli Ministry of Defense in 1957. Negevist machine gunners will be going up against their Hamas machine gunner counterparts. Hamas uses an assorted list of weapons, to say the least, but primarily they use some version of the PKM as their machine gun of choice. This is because the PK series comes from where Hamas sources and smuggles their weapons, Syria and Iran, who have Russian-based systems. There are some pros and cons between the two systems. This is up to debate. Some will claim that the PKM series is more reliable, seeing as these weapon systems will be operating against each other in dense urban environments almost exclusively. I would personally rather have the Negev due to its performance in other categories besides reliability and ballistics. It's lighter, significantly smaller, highly ergonomic, and of course the only weapon metrics that really matters to me, it's modular. On the real, the modularity of the Negev is extremely important. It's one of its biggest advantages. Hamas fighters in the world of belt-fed machine guns realistically only have the option of full-size PKM or a full-on 12.7 Dushka heavy machine gun, both of which are designed to fight in open fields of Eastern Europe, not to fight close-quarters combat in densely populated Gaza City. This isn't to say they aren't extremely feared and respected weapons, both of them, but from my point of view, the lack of an intermediate cartridge belt-fed machine gun severely limits Hamas' strategic options. The PKM is best suited in a static position. Its size and recoil make it near impossible to be useful in situations that isn't just falling back to the next fighting position. It's also more difficult to run optics and night vision equipment on. In fact, an NG7 is less than half the length of a PKM machine gun, while still delivering a 7.62 round. There are exceptions to every rule, of course, and there are variants of the PKM that are lightweight. We also have to consider the fact that Hamas operates very differently in their strategy and tactics. They place a premium on carrying RPGs and lightweight rifles to increase mobility instead of allowing themselves to get bogged down in a single fighting position. I know there's probably many of you that are listening right now that have personal experience with this weapon system, and I would love to hear your firsthand thoughts in the comment section. I'm your average infantryman, Chris Cappy. If you want more updates, follow me on Instagram at CappyArmy, hit the like and subscribe button, and check out one of these other videos that we produced if you've got another minute, and I'll see you again in a few days.